Welcome everybody to the University of Bradford, the University of and for Bradford. It's a delight to see so many people here this evening, and I think this is because of Anand's influence in his field. I think we've got quite an audience on Zoom with us as well. So I want to say it's a real privilege to be the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Bradford, where we have leading global thinkers. And our university, through this lecture series, we're keen to share our very best research and to engage and inspire you. Our most recent professors are very often giving enlightening explanations of their own specialist subject areas. And tonight, as you can see, we're going to be looking at justice and sustainability, unpacking the paradoxes. I'm not going to continue to read the title, but Anand tells me we are going to be thrilled with the paradoxes he's going to present to us this evening. So conducting international significant research means our academics always have to have their fingers on the pulse and be at the forefront of their research and emerging trends. And this is what Anand is going to talk to us about this evening. So we celebrate this evening the promotion of PB Anand to Professor of Public Policy and Sustainable Development. This was in 2019, but of course you can remember what was happening in 2019. And we weren't able to celebrate and present him to you all personally. So I'm going to say a little bit about Anand. Actually, I think I'm going to say quite a lot, but hopefully I'll need more time for you, Anand. There's a lot to say about Anand. He joined the University of Bradford 24 years ago, almost to the day, the 18th of May. And in the intervening years, he has held various roles and has been a really, really strong academic and a really good citizen for the University of Bradford. He's now head of the Department of Peace Studies and International Development, where he's leading the team into the next generation of work in terms of peace and development. And it's a subject of strategic importance for the university as we move forward to really think about peace and international development in new and different ways. So Anand, as I said, 24 years at the university. We're hugely appreciative of your work, Anand, and he's also played many senior roles across the university. He quite likes being on committees. It's very unusual. He's been on council for 3 terms, I think it was. Council 1 term, Senate 3. Yeah. So who wants to be on an academic Senate board for 3 terms? He's recently became the new chair of our university assembly, and he's hugely honoured of this because he was elected by his colleagues. Now, the reason he really enjoys being on committees and governance committees is because that's where you can really make a difference if you're prepared to put up with governance and some tedious aspects of university bureaucracy, but it is really where you could make a difference. So Anand's matters in the city and urban planning in India. Until that point, he learned in his local language, but everything at the university was taught in English. The maths was no problem for him, but he struggled with physics and chemistry. So for his first couple of years, he had to learn a whole new language, as well as study his subjects, which he had to read and work a lot, trying to grasp the intricacies of a second language. But by the final year, he became the secretary of the debating club. Quite a transition. Although Anand began his career in higher education within the technical area of engineering and urban planning, he became very interested in economics, which played at the back of his mind constantly, and so he started to move towards the social sciences. He started his career in the civil service, where he discovered there was not a lot of innovation. He taught himself how to program his own Lotus 123. And he soon caught the attention of senior colleagues, where he created a program to automate costs and reporting. This step provided opportunities to travel as he moved into designing corruption-proof programs, all the while learning how governments work and public finance. Not too long, he joined an NGO, so he could influence public policy, where he stayed for 3 years as a consultant advising the government in Xinjiang, India. Never want to miss an opportunity, Anand had the opportunity to work in the Netherlands. All he had to do was submit a prize-winning report, which of course he did, and he went there to work for a momentous year in 1992, where he could develop his thinking in the connections between modern cities, planning and economics. Another 3 years later with the NGO, and the time was right for Anand to cash in his pension, he tells me, and he moved to Strathclyde to do his PhD. So he hasn't had a traditional route into academia. Having the time and space to look into linking modern economics for large cities with an experience he will never forget. He then joined the University of Bradford in 1998 and finally was able to defend his PhD in 2001. During the time with us, Anand has made the most of every single opportunity that has been put before him. He's delivered programs in Ethiopia, working in Central Asia, joining the Caribbean Development Bank project, receiving the Chancellor's Award for Academic Distinguished Teaching from Baroness Lockwood, all the while learning, he said, constantly new skills. And in 2009, he was asked to lead a national development project in Mongolia. As he thought this was a mistake, they'd asked him, but they had sought him out. Anand was wanted to do this project based on his previous work and his published research. So Anand is somebody that likes to constantly learn, develop, reflect. He's a great colleague. He's a fantastic mentor for our students. I wanted to make a point about the Chevening Scholars specifically. Thanks to Anand and his direct support for these Chevening Scholars, the numbers of people that want to come to the University of Bradford through the Chevening Scholarship has grown year on year. Anand asks me frequently to meet with the Chevening Scholars, to listen to them, to learn about where they come from, to work out how they can contribute to Bradford while they're here. And many of you are in the room this evening. And I know these Chevening Scholars just because Anand is determined that he wants them to have the best experience at Bradford, and that means everybody should work to support them. Two of Anand's defining characteristics, as I see them, are humility and respect. He is respected and admired by his students, colleagues, and he embodies the university values of trust, innovation, inclusion, and excellence.
Good evening, and Vice Chancellor, or as you prefer to be called by us, Shirley, thank you very much for those kind words. I am, as you know, a little bit shy person, so when you were saying all those things, I had to kind of control myself. It's really appreciated. I think 24 years is a very important and long time in anyone's life, so I've been here in this. My passion is here, and I think many people across this room I have had the privilege to work with, either as students or colleagues in the university and outside. So it's an enormous privilege to work with you, and I don't think I have anything that you already don't know to say, but I'll try my best to make it interesting and hopefully share some ideas. So when I was thinking about it, well, you know, it's an open goal. You can talk about anything. Who can miss it? Some people can miss it, and then, but at least they get given a chance. So I hope if I miss the goal and if I don't deliver to what you were expecting, I hope you will give me another chance. So that's it. So let me start briefly with my current work, and I'll come back there in the end. So at the moment, I think in the last few years, I have been mainly focusing on these kind of connected themes. So one is trying to understand what makes cities inclusive, smart, sustainable, etc. This is very important part of our work, and especially if we want to achieve sustainable development goals and also the climate related goals. This is very important part of this puzzle. So that's my interest, but that is also connected with my public policy side, which is in terms of how to make or how to develop inclusive institutions and inclusive governance. What does it mean? And these are buzzwords. We take them for granted, but when we get to work on them, we understand that there are huge challenges. And so in some of my modules, in policy analysis module, we kind of look at quite a number of these things. There are students here who have worked with us on those modules, so I think they will appreciate what I'm trying to refer to here. So broadly, these two themes, so just keep them at the back of your mind. Key messages, just in case I run out of time and I have to stop, at least I have delivered the main message, so I don't have to worry about that. So sustainability, yes, it's a buzzword and we all know and we use it quite a lot, but if we think about it, so it has, as we say, 3 pillars. So it's not, in the past, we used to think of sustainability is about green agenda, planting trees and reducing carbon. They're all important. The environmental dimension is only one of the three pillars, we say. So sustainability has 3 pillars. One is social, one is economic, and the third one is environmental. And these 3 are interconnected. They can influence each other. And we have to understand and we have to think of developing policies, institutions to address all 3 of them, not any one of them in isolation. So that's quite a challenge. So that's number 1. And number 2, of course, there will be trade-offs. If we were lucky and if we could do all of those things, that will be great. But in reality, we know that if we want to do more of one thing, you have to give up something else. And so how do we resolve these trade-offs? So if you want to take care of poor people, for example, and then give them energy subsidies, that's very important. At the moment, we are talking about energy price rise and price cap being lifted, etc. here in the UK. So there are a lot of people. This afternoon, I was listening to the radio. There were a lot of people who were expressing about how these price rises have affected their ability to meet other needs, and they're cutting down things. There are elderly people who have switched off heating since December, etc. So when you hear about that, it's really kind of it's something urgent has to be done. But if you do more of that, that means something else has to give in. So we have to do something else, maybe funding for space program or funding for hosting football games or whatever. So are we prepared to do that? So those are the kind of trade-offs. So that's number 2. Number 3, whenever we make these kind of decisions in policies, obviously there will be winners and losers. Some people will benefit, some people will not. And how are we going to balance that? So how do we deal with those kind of challenges? So that's number 3. And number 4, so coming back to sustainability as an intergenerational issue. In essence, whenever we talk about sustainability, I will show you in a minute, we always talk about present generation and future generation. So it's a kind of an issue related to how are we going to face our obligations towards future generations, but at the same time, how do we deal with justice over space as well? Time is important, but justice over space. And so I will elaborate on this, and towards the end of the talk, I will present 6 dimensions of justice just to combine these 2. So that is space and time. Sounds like a physics lecture, so a certain partner will be very interested. Okay, so I think Vice Chancellor already mentioned, so the values of our university, these are very, very important. I think these have not been created just as buzzwords. I know that, Shirley and senior team, Zahir is here, various others, we care deeply about these values, and I know that. And sustainability is no different. We cannot achieve sustainability without trust, without inclusiveness, and without innovation, and without excellence. So I have seen many examples I can give where there is a kind of a talk about sustainability, but existing things are not working very well. So you need to set the house in order before you can talk about sustainability. So I think those are very well connected. So in that sense, our university values are very much, kind of relevant here as well. So paradox, I used it and I thought about it. I was just thinking, how can I make it less boring? So that's why I thought let me come up with this idea of a paradox, but apparently that's something interesting, so we'll see. Paradox is different from oxymoron. Oxymoron is like bittersweet. So where within the statement you have 2 opposite things connected, whereas a paradox is kind of a statement that is, as the OED definition says, there is something contradictory. And so we have to kind of investigate, we have to explain, and we have to find, whether it's relevant or not. So, okay, so what motivated me to get into the environment and sustainability? At this point, people are thinking, oh my God, he's going Sorry, I hope I will not do that. It's my inaugural, so I hope I can say a few words about my journey. But I'm going to focus more on, we will explore together on sustainability itself. Yeah, like the sandwich shop in our town in Halifax, which the name is called the sandwich shop, but in the bottom, just in case anybody is confused, they even spelled it out, hot and cold sandwiches. So like that, my title of the lecture said sustainability, and I'm here spelling it out. So I hope you'll forgive. But so we are going to look at, in terms of sustainability, what is sustainable development, and then we are also going to look at environmental values. I'll say briefly about Chennai. This is my opportunity to share a little bit about the city where I was born, but also I did a lot of research on. My PhD was on Chennai, so I'll talk a little bit about that. I want to also spend a little bit of time on cars, climate and justice. This is something from our recent work, and then conclude with the 6 dimensions of justice. Are we okay so far? Yep. Okay. So write down a 2-digit number. At this point, he goes to his bag and tries to pull out some things. Okay. Right. So this is what we want. Yes, chocolates, they will come later, don't worry. So, okay. So if somebody can help me. Oh, no, there's always better to do it while, audience are waiting. So yeah, if you can open it and give one to every person. Color doesn't matter. Okay, so the cards are coming to you. Sorry about that. Like my boss, says I should have opened it, but I was quite busy today, so I didn't manage to do that, so my apologies. But the cards are coming to you. If you have a pen, writing instrument, so you can write down. Write a 2-digit number and then keep the card with you. So I'm not going to take it. So you can mix the colors so that different people get different colors. Thank you. Yeah, if you pass half to the other side. Okay, so you will get the card. You write a 2-digit number. Okay, 2-digit number. Pen. So there's one here. Thank you. We are post-COVID time, so it's okay to share pens, I guess. There is hand sanitizer available outside. So while this is happening, I take the opportunity to welcome lots of different friends, my academic colleagues, but also colleagues from born in Bradford, City of Bradford Metropolitan District Council. Did I get it correct? Yeah. And also our friends from Halifax, Martin, Catherine, and my professor. So I'll say a little bit more about Dagan Hani. Mr. Andrew Fisher, principal of North Halifax Grammar School. Okay, sorry, I will. Thank you. And also, I can see our various colleagues from Peace Studies and also our emeritus professors, Paul Rogers, and also Tom Woodhouse, and also Jill and Greg. So very warm welcome. Thank you. Thank you for coming. And Sam as well, so I can see Sam. So, okay, fantastic. So you got the cards and you're written down the number. So keep it with you. We'll come back to that in a short while. Okay, so where did I start? So in 1984, there was a major disaster, Bhopal gas disaster, and I finished my bachelor degree, as Professor Congdon was mentioning. And this time I was thinking, various things. I wanted to do management, or I wanted to do another technology degree, and suddenly this happened, and this made me really think hard, and that's what actually has driven me towards the field of environment and sustainability. And I never forget this, because it was a very tragic incident, and over 1,700 people, official toll, 1,700 people died, but really perhaps many more, and many more, hundreds of people have been affected for lifelong. So this always has kind of remained with me. And so I went to do my master's degree in a very famous city, Ahmedabad. where Mahatma Gandhi's ashram is there on the right. And so I worked with Professor Meera Mehta. She also had made the similar journey. She was an architect and then became a social scientist and PhD in social science. So that was a great kind of inspiration. So I was working on housing needs analysis and housing needs assessment, and computers were just coming at that time. So it was great. And you might remember, some of you, so there used to be a card punching machine. So I had done that. And then you had to respectfully leave your shoes outside when you are entering the computer center because no dust is allowed. So we have done that. So it's almost like going to a shrine or something. So that's what I have kind of been working there. And then I got a job in civil service, and I joined the Ministry of Urban Development in Government of India, and I was posted to Chandigarh. So from Ahmedabad already had various architects design various buildings, including Le Corbusier. So then I came to Chandigarh, which the whole city was designed by Le Corbusier. So that was very interesting. It was how Indian kind of public adapted that city was interesting. While there, I also had the opportunity to visit the famous Golden Temple. I will never forget. Amazing place. But at the same time, it was the time when there was a lot of, if you like, protests against the government was happening. So there was a lot of, at that time they were called terrorists. We would, call them perhaps armed groups, etc. And this person, KPS Gill, he was put in charge there to quell any kind of this terrorism. So there was, traveling was not easy, and every place had a kind of an evening curfew. So at 6 o'clock, wherever you are, buses will stop. So in my kind of organization, I was the youngest person, and I was the only one who was not married. So they thought he's expendable. So anytime any project needed inspection, send Anand. So I had opportunity to travel all through Punjab and Haryana and various places, all kinds of, you never know where you have to stay. It's not like present generation where you have WhatsApp, etc. So you don't know when you're leaving, when you're back, there's no phone, you don't know where you're going to stay, you just have to go prepared and be there. So I think that was a brilliant training in resilience, I would guess, I don't know. And then after that, I didn't like the kind of the stifling nature of the government, so I left it, still wanted to work in public policy. I joined a think tank, and the first opportunity was to work on a 20-year development strategy for a metropolitan city. Now, this is once in a lifetime opportunity for a city planner. Most city planners never get an opportunity to work on a city plan. They work on small bits of it because already plan has been decided. So this was absolutely a brilliant opportunity. So we're working. So that's where I met Doug. Doug McCallum, who's my very special guest here, along with Hani. Doug visited Chennai, Madras at that time still, as part of UN's Mission for Sustainable Cities program. So then that's where we got to meet him. But I was working with a person called Mr. Dattatri, who later won the UN Habitat Scroll of Honor. I mean, for an individual to be given that kind of honor. He was a phenomenal person. He was an urban planner. He retired as the chief planner of Madras Metropolitan Development Authority. But he's just persona. He would have fitted right into University of Bradford, surely. The values were exactly the same. Very inclusive. He never had any pompousness or anything. In India, probably, if you want to see chief planner, you have to go through various people, gatekeepers. Yeah, in our public policy module, people know this, gatekeepers. You can't see these kind of people. He never had any of those. He will just come down, and so he was as friendly with you as he will be with the security person or with a driver. Or phenomenal. But his knowledge and his ability to kind of bring people together. So we worked on that, and we proposed various things, which government not always took on board. And then I ended up in Institute for Housing Studies in Rotterdam to study my master's degree under supervision of Doug McCallum. My students don't know that. Can I request Doug and Hani to stand up and just face the audience so my students can see you? So, thank you. It's an enormous privilege to give a lecture like this among friends, with Vice Chancellor, my dean, various people here. But also that was made even more special. Doug and Hani drove from Scotland to be here today. I mean, it's, so. Okay, so that was also the time when a lot of talk was going on about sustainability, sustainable development, and you would have heard about a very famous book called Blueprint for a Green Economy. It sounds like a title that you could almost have today, but it was a bestseller among academic books, that is, in 1988. And I read this book while in Netherlands, and I told the guy, I want to go and meet this person, so can you please write a letter of introduction? So Doug wrote a letter of introduction, and then we posted it, and then I took a ferry and came to London, and I found Professor Pierce never got this letter, but he kindly agreed to see me anyway for 5 minutes. He said, I'm very busy, so I can only give you 5 minutes. I said, fine. And so we went into his room. He said, shoot, what is your first question? So I asked my first question. So he answered, and then he said, what is your second question? So I had a lot of questions. So I asked him a second question. By third question, he picked up the phone and he told his secretary, cancel the next meeting, I'm staying here. So he stayed with me for next 1 hour. And after that, he gave me a lot of resources, and he said, anytime you want to come and do masters in environmental economics here, come and, here is a scholarship for it. I said, I already have 2 master's degrees. What I want is a PhD. He said, but there is no scholarship for PhD. So with that in kind of thinking in heart, I went back to India another 3 years working in the civil society organization. And then I said, okay, now I should go for PhD. So I couldn't go to UCL, but I went to Strathclyde University. And first 3 months, I didn't understand. It was just like a deja vu, like Shirley said. When I went to my engineering degree, first 3 months, I didn't understand because that was English. And then I came to Scotland, first 3 months, I didn't understand a word. But you can get by smiling and nodding, so that's what I did. But eventually, now, of course, I love Scottish accent. Yeah. Sustainable development, so we all know this very famous definition. Sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their needs. Right? So we know this. I mean, you can wake me up in the middle of the night, I can say it. My wife will be annoyed because I may forget more important things, but this one I remember. But the reason I mentioned it is, I think, again, my students on the critical perspectives module know this. When we want to open it up and try to understand this definition, okay, this is a accepted definition, World Commission on Environment and Development, our common future. This is the only definition that we have that UN organizations worldwide have to work with. But when we start looking at the definition and pause for a moment, we can see immediately, development, who's development? What kind of development? Is it social development, economic development? Meeting the needs of the present, needs. Anybody who has got a teenage child knows that needs is a very dangerous word, right? So you have unlimited needs. Is there anyone in this room who doesn't have a need for an iPhone? We all need an iPhone, maybe we all need a Tesla, I don't know, right? So needs and wants, they're kind of overlapping. Economists know that wants are unlimited, but needs can be limited. But in reality, it's very difficult to make those distinctions. So once we kind of start to unpack each of those words, we end up with this definition. So sustainable development is that, the, of the, without the, of, to, there. Because all other words are controversial, right? We cannot agree on them. So we can see, I mean, this is kind of a humorous way of saying this, but I think that means, the most important definition that we have is very subjective. It's full of a lot of subjective interpretations, and that creates policy challenges for us, right? So that's kind of, keeping activity. Yeah, I don't want to bore you to death with my story. So activity. So remember the number you wrote, have a good look at it. Maybe if necessary, write the same number again below it, just to reinforce. You don't have to tell me what number it is. We'll come to that later. Okay. Right? Are you good? Okay. Okay, so why are you interested in PhD then? I mean, what do you want to do about PhD? So every time we have a student who is interested in doing PhD, many of them are motivated by some real life issues, real life challenge. They have seen something, they want to make a difference. There are people in this room, I don't want to embarrass them, but my students, they want to address stranger to water scarcity. It has been going on for the last 40 years. So when I was working there as well, there was a lot of water scarcity. And instead of using my brain to do some analysis, I would be standing in a queue waiting for water to be delivered. And so at one time I made a calculation. how many people are standing and how many minutes, and if you convert that into what is the GDP loss, it was staggering. So it would be much cheaper to buy for the government to buy water and give it to everybody, because the amount of GDP that is produced when they are not wasting their time is much more. So these kind of things motivated me. So I kind of went to examine this and just, again, tribute to my supervisors and a number of other people. Again, Doug was also there, Rowena, and a number of various, I don't want to name call, but you never know people. So, right, so activity. We wrote the 2-digit number, so have another good look at it. We'll come to that. Yeah, no, I'm keep saying it. It's very important, so I'll keep coming back to it. Okay, at this time, I think I still have another half an hour, 30 minutes, 25 minutes. Yeah, okay, good. I'll try to keep it. Yeah. Right, so I will say a little bit about environmental values and valuation. So many things that the nature provides, the ecosystem services, they are not marketed. So we do not know how valuable it is. At the moment, there is discussion about what is the value of the pollination that bees do. And it's estimated at several billions of dollars. If the bees were not there, when we buy vanilla, we are told that in Madagascar, people have to actually hand pollinate them. Yeah. So if you imagine that if we have to hand pollinate all the things, all the nectarines, all the cherries that we are having, etc., just you can imagine what will be the staggering loss. So just like me standing in the water queue. Yeah. So it's really the same thing. So bees are doing it for free, right? So, and that's why I think it's very, very important. So while these values are very important, sometimes we don't recognize them, and anything that is not recognized then gets neglected, kind of is taken for granted, is for free. So some people came up with this idea of, can we put a value and can we kind of estimate just like we estimate on other things? So this research has been going on for nearly 25, 30 years, but a major accident happened in 1989. Exxon Valdez, so this is a big oil cruiser, oil-shaped oil tanker, was going through Alaska, and then it ran aground in a place called Prince William Sound, and it spilled. It's not the biggest oil spill, but it's among the top 10 oil spills. But it raised the most controversy because all the oil spill happened in Alaska in pristine kind of areas. A lot of fish and also wildlife, fowl, etc., were affected. And so some economists then immediately wanted to do an estimation of the loss. Exxon was willing to pay compensation for cleanup. They were saying, no, you can't just pay for only cleanup. Cleanup is the direct effect, but there is a lot of indirect effect. There's a lot of wildlife that has been hurt. There's a lot of pristine area that is lost. So you have to pay for that as well. So they came up with a fantastic team. What you would call in football, maybe dream team or A team or something like that. So they put together a team of people, the best person designing survey questions, the best person who is an econometrician, etc. 6 people, they were put together as a team. They conducted a study and they came up with values. And Exxon heard about this. They panicked. Oh, if this is accepted, that means from tomorrow floodgates will open. We cannot, allow this. So then Exxon started to offer research grants to people, anybody who wanted to criticize this methodology. So a lot of people took those grants and they wrote brilliant papers questioning this methodology. So you had this lot of controversy going on. And then in 1992, we had 2 Nobel Prize winners, Ken Arrow and Rob Solow, to be constituted into a panel. It's called a Blue Ribbon panel, and they were asked to look into this methodology. Is this really a good methodology? Please tell us. So they held deliberations, and then they wrote the report, and they said, yes, certain precautions have to be followed. If you follow those precautions, it is an acceptable methodology. So I think that was a brilliant turning point. And then from then, a lot of people started to do. You can recognize valuing public goods. Is it purchase of moral satisfaction? Daniel Kahneman, at this time, he still hasn't won his Nobel Prize. He was writing this in 1992. Peter Diamond, again, contingent valuation. Is some number better than no number at all? Because in evaluation, you are going and asking people and you are coming up with a number. So he wrote this again, and Peter Diamond later won Nobel Prize. So there's kind of, the topic is potential for Nobel Prize. I did choose it. I'm still haven't been in the running for Nobel Prize yet, but I'll work hard, I promise. So anyway, that was very, very interesting background. So here's another activity. We'll come back to our activity card. Here are 4 options. Suppose I know you have a TV, or many of you have a TV, or you don't want a TV. That's okay. For the purpose of this exercise, please think that you are in the market looking for a TV and you have bucks in the pocket. Don't worry about the budget. Yeah, you have bucks in the pocket and you have the budget. So there are 4 options here. You have to choose one of them. right? Don't tell me anything. So we will see if this Slido thing works. So for that, I have to come out of this and then go to Slido. So this is where you are going to vote. Yeah. Okay. So if you point your phone at it, it should work. Or if you go to slido.com and then use that slash, what is it called? Pound sign or something, yeah? Hashtag pound, of course. And 4165281. So you should go to that. So you remember the choices, 4 choices, yeah? Shall I go back to the choices? It's not showing the poll because I didn't press here. Yeah. Yeah. So please choose. While they're doing that, I can bring out my other props. Okay. Anybody who has not voted yet? Very interesting. Right. So whenever you do live experiment, you should always expect that it will go wrong. So I wrote down the answer to the question. I had 2 witnesses when I wrote down the answer. They don't know the answer, but they know that I wrote it down in this piece of paper. So it's not old magician trick where you tell the answer and then they will practically find the place, where it is written. Okay, so what did I write? The answer, I am expecting most people to go for C. You failed me because you went for B. So that's okay. Why I was expecting C, I will tell you in a minute. Okay. So what happened is, okay, so on the one hand, you have one which is 799, and that is Samsung, and 979. Those two look almost identical, right? And then you have this one, which looks, I don't know, Sony brand name, and also there is something which says what hi-fi, 5 stars, and something. So it's kind of telling you there's a lot more information there, and it's only another 300 points more. So for that, you're getting a Sony, you're getting something with 5 stars, and yeah, something 4K. There are some things which are similar, and then there is another Sony, which is also similar kind of a thing, but which is 1799. And they say, oh, yes, I would like a Sony, but I can't afford 1799, but at least 1299 is good enough. So most people will go in that direction. So in marketing, people know this very well. But in kind of nudge theory, again, we are nudged in particular direction. And what kind of TVs are displayed in the showroom, it's not accidental. A lot of calculation goes into that. So you will always see some very cheap ones. They don't want you to look at the cheap ones, and they want you to go for the middle. And so to make you go for the middle, they have to really push the upper end one. So that's why they will have a 3,000 pound TV, even though nobody is ever going to buy a 3,000 pound TV. Why it stays in the shop? Because it forces you to go to this middle, right? So that's kind of, this is the anchoring effect. We know this very well. So in contingent valuation, this kind of small little things can make a lot of difference. Okay, so I think I've already done that. So yeah, I worked on all of this literature review, etc., and then I went to do my field work, and the government decided to change the name of the city to Chennai. Yeah, so this was the time when political kind of a determination was in Indian cities. Bombay became Mumbai, and so then not to be outdone, Madras became Chennai. So I felt like Hugh Grant in that famous film. Who went up the hill and came down a mountain or something, about a Welsh mountain. Yeah, so, but I think, just a little bit of tidbits about Madras. We really don't know why it's called Madras, to be very honest. Yeah, So if anybody tells you anything other than that, they're just weaving it. Yeah. So historians have written about this. We guess it may be because there was a person who was a local chieftain who was in charge, so he was called Madrasapa, but that's a very common name, so I don't buy that. But the second one is more plausible. So Portuguese already discovered that there was a famous church. Again, Saint Thomas, Apostle Thomas, is supposed to have been banished to southern India, so that's what people there believe, and he spent his last days in a cave near Madras. So Portuguese came and built in 12th century a church in his honor, so that became a madrasa. So that's why it's called Madras. So these are theories. Anyway, so this was very interesting. Even though I lived in the city before, this was an opportunity to do actually groundwork, fieldwork, a lot of interesting stuff. Water scarcity I mentioned. So again, a lot of lakes were there, and all these lakes were built over by developing, new housing, etc. So of course, in that case, the groundwater recharging is going to decrease, and you are going to expect to have more water scarcity or difficulty. So that's kind of, this is move. And I constructed a water balance sheet. This was something I tried to, this was my innovation. I tried, because a lot of information I collected, I said, how can I present this in one A4 page? So then I came up with this idea of a water balance sheet. So where are all the sources of water to the city, and where are they going? It took me a lot of time. It's about 3-4 months of work, but nobody paid any attention. But I now notice that there are researchers in New Zealand who are using similar concept to develop, blue city index. So which is very similar. Today, perhaps we would call it circular economy of water. So something like that, just looking at the water economy. Okay, so remember, this is a final reminder. Yeah, take a good look at those numbers. Yeah, okay. So for people on the Zoom, you could also have written the 2 digits. So I hope you have written and keep looking at them. So we're going to do the activity. So here's a box of chocolates, a good one, organic and fair trade one. So it has a fair trade logo, it's organic, very good box of chocolates. And so you have to bid for winning this. So for really high bids, you will also get some pens. These are 95% recycled plastic bottles. The pens are made from that. And you'll also get a bestseller book not by me, but Professor Asimoglu and Robinson. They gave Professor Asimoglu gave a talk here earlier, a couple of months ago. So that's what you'll get. Really high bid, that's what you'll get. If I don't think it's really high bid, book stays here, you get chocolates and pen. Otherwise, you just get the chocolate, okay? So that's the thing. So let me go to my Slido and write down your number first. And okay, so this one we can stop. Write down your bids on. Okay, so it should let you. After that, you should be able to go back to Slido and do the numbers again. For this package, yes. Pounds. No, Naira. Okay. Whoa. Hey. Come on, there are 6 more digits above 23. Something interesting. Okay. Wow. Wow. Okay. Fabulous. Who can beat that 99? So I have to check if I think we accept checks, right? Right. So okay, fantastic. So the reason you had to write down on your card was so that it's a proof that you're the one who bid for 99. So who bid for 99? Somebody has bid for 99. We have a 99. I think more than 1%. That's shining in bold. That means several people have bid for 99. So we have a competition here. Fabulous. 120 or 12? Oh, okay, 120, fabulous. You have to pay. This is, I said 2 but if people want to pay 200, I'm not going to say no. This is for a good cause. So 200. 200. Oh, okay. He didn't write. Okay. No, it's, fun part. So whoever is the highest bidder, obviously. I didn't even say, for example, if I said, we want to raise money for Ukraine, I'm sure you would have bid even more, for example. Yeah. So I didn't even say that. So what happened here is, the chocolates, approximately, the chocolate's price. You don't know the price of the book. I only said Asimoglu Robinson, so you could Google it. And you also know there are recycled, very good quality pens. You could roughly estimate, but that's not what you are doing, right? What you did was you saw other people said 33, then you anchor yourself against 33. You are going, and so I think it was a fantastic result. You will be relieved that you don't have to pay. It's okay, but give yourselves a round of applause, because I think this is. With much trepidation, I designed this game. I was thinking, I read about it. Some Harvard professors have done some similar experiments. So there's a professor who puts up $20 bill and says, bid for it. And then there is a bidding war goes on in Harvard classroom. And there were people bidding for $50. For $20 bill, they were bidding $50, $60, etc. It's completely irrational. Yeah, completely irrational. But we do it. So I think what it shows is that in those kind of contexts, it's our kind of traditional view of rationality, it does not work, right? So coming back to the valuation question, that's why when you talk, when you go and ask people about, do you care about such and such? Do you care about this park? Yes, I really care about it. Are you willing to pay? Yes, I'll pay £1,000. Will you really pay £1,000? It's very difficult to know. So some economists feel that we should not believe anything that people say. We only should believe what they actually do. It's called revealed preference. We should only look at what they actually spend rather than what they say. But as I said, Solo and Arrow panel concluded that willingness to pay studies are okay. As long as you follow the methodology and steps, it is okay to do, right? So it's okay. And I showed you the TV example, how this kind of a complex information confuses us, right? So these two examples go side by side. So that's why I was trying to do this exercise. So I hope it was okay. Let me now proceed. Towards the end, we will. Okay. Okay. Fabulous. Thank you. Thank you very much. Our Zoom people, I don't know how much you bid. So unfortunately, we can't give chocolates, but please believe that we are thinking about you. So because there are a lot of people joining by Zoom. Right. So I hope that was okay as an exercise. I was trying to show about the valuation. So, okay. So, sorry, not yet. Don't start that. Okay. So we did that. Turning points can come anytime, and for me, this was a train journey I took to Edinburgh while I was a PhD student in Glasgow. I heard that Professor Amartya Sen, I read about him, but at that time I was still not fully aware of his work. So I took the train journey to Edinburgh, went to hear him presenting at the Edinburgh Science Festival, and it was fabulous. So the return journey was kind of, my mind was buzzing, and so I have already done by this time my field work, and I was analyzing my data. So it kind of started to give me new lenses to think about. And Professor Sen always talks about this distinction between well-being freedoms and agency freedoms. If you can't remember anything else from today's discussion, please remember these two. I think this is the most important kind of message from his work. Traditional kind of a development always focused on well-being freedoms. People to be fed. Oh, there is a hunger, so we must provide food. There is housing shortage, we must build houses, and various things. Or if it is relief work in case of famine or disaster, etc., we always focus on the well-being part. But Professor Sen says that is only one part. There is also the other part, the agency part, which is very important. We have to think of people as having that agency. So they have the freedom to think, and they want to have the freedom to be heard, freedom to participate in decision making, and freedom to walk with pride, for example, and to feel that sense of dignity. These are also very important. And so these two go together. I think this was a phenomenal kind of thing. It took me a while to learn and understand this. I'll come back to it in a short while. So based on that, we wrote a paper and we're lucky to get it published in Journal of International Development. This was the first paper, as far as I can tell, which connects Professor Sen's theory on entitlements and water scarcity. If you come across any other paper which has done it before us, please point it to me or send it to me. I would very much appreciate. Before I go further, so we were looking at water scarcity. So I was also thinking that institutions don't work in vacuum. So state government has political kind of tools. So they want to kind of influence how the institutions work. So in a city like Madras, Chennai, you had local government and you had a water board which is controlled by state level government. So if the political party, the local government and the state government, they are different, then you have some kind of a dynamic. And also if elections are going to happen, you have some kind of dynamic. So from kind of a game theory, we can learn there are some strategic moves. So I had to put my full name, Anand PB, because this is also another Anand, more famous Anand, son of Madras chess grandmaster Vishwanathan Anand. So he's V Anand. So that's why I had to put my full name there. So in our work, we found that people were kind of not happy with just one source of water. They were, developing a portfolio of sources. This is kind of a risk management measure. You can see that. And what was interesting was that there was a very clear pattern with regard to poverty and income and lack of access to water. We know this intuitively, but to prove it with the data, I think that was the most important kind of breakthrough. We showed that low-income people have very little access to water compared to medium and high-income people, and this was measurable in liters. And we could also see that people who live in the main city had more access to water than people in the periphery. So we call it now peri-urban areas, etc. So this was kind of a stark. At that time, we didn't have this kind of data. So I think it was something. I did some more interesting work on choice models. I'm not going to bore you, so I'll skip this. If anyone is interested, our paper is there, and also I have a chapter in our book. I'll talk about that. So what were my original contributions at this stage? So kind of starting with contingent valuation method and applying it from bottom up, going to Chennai, wanting to use this contingent valuation method, and then finding that it doesn't work. So I had to really design it bottom up completely differently. And developing the choice method. At the time I was doing the field work, I did not even know it's called choice method. I came up with the method in the field, and then only after you got the data and when you're trying to analyze how to analyze it, the econometric model, that's when I learned about choice method. And they explain what are choices by households, and we see that they are using risk management behavior. They are using, and there is some rationality. But as I showed you earlier, there is also scope for irrationality. So those were kind of, and I also did some work on waste management. I don't have time to go into that. Okay, and then I came here in Bradford in '98 with lots of ideas. And then in 2001, I was really lucky to go from here. I hope Flavio is joining on the call today. Flavio is based in Barcelona. This was another momentous kind of turning point because Flavio, anyone who works in capability approach knows Flavio Comim perhaps has written several books, etc. Organized the first major conference on capability approach, had the idea of bringing together everybody from across the world. Around more than 400 people were there in Cambridge. And that's when I knew Des Gasper before. Professor Gasper, I think, may be joining from IISS in Hague. But this new kind of this conference gave us all an opportunity to think about how we can apply capability approach in the issues that we are interested in, and with Shailaja Fennell. So these collaborations continued for a long time, and with Professor Gasper, we published 3 special issues of journals. We did 2 workshops with Flavio again, 3 Cambridge capability conferences, and also the Handbook of BRICS and Emerging Economies, a huge book. My children always say that, Dad, you should write smaller books, not this big one, which is difficult to carry. I think we could have easily made it into 3 books. We made a mistake of publishing only 1 book. Adam Swallow from Oxford University Press might be on the Zoom call. Adam, we could have had 3 books for you, but anyway, maybe next time. We were also doing some work with the UNU wider, the papers I mentioned, about water. These were published there. And the KT work, I think already Professor Congdon has mentioned, so I'll skip this. And then winning a British Academy grant to look at sharing water peacefully. That was, again, a very lucky break that enabled us to explore, enabled me to explore water disputes, especially river disputes and state disputes. I did kind of a lot of work on that, especially role of identity in shaping politicization of water. So water conflicts arise when water gets politicized, and the identity issues help to politicize water, right? So if you have two states, but there are no identity differences, all the people are similar, then you wouldn't have opportunity to politicize that much. But if you have two states, whether one is different country, for example, Nepal, India, for example, or within one country, you have two states, completely different language, then the river sharing can become really politicized. And that's what we see across different contexts. And there is also the issue of symmetric versus asymmetric externalities. River waters are asymmetric externalities because they affect the downstream state or downstream people much more than upstream people. Upstream people, because they get the first cut in the water, they have the more control, etc. So because of that asymmetry, it creates a lot of problems. It's very difficult to arrive at cooperative solution. If it is a symmetric externality, both parties have incentive to cooperate. So if it is a lake and two countries are sharing the lake and look, lake is getting polluted, it's very easy to bring the two parties to the table. If it's a river, it's very difficult to bring the two parties to the table. So from that, we can understand why Nile or various other things take so much time to bring parties to the table. Okay, so then I had, again, because of this human development capability approach work, I had opportunities to work on Mongolia Human Development Report, again, a huge honor and privilege, but also contribute to various other UNDP reports. These are all available online. Most recent one is for Eritrea. We were looking at a huge potash mining project and how its benefits can be translated into sustainable development goals. Okay, so this is my final slide of acknowledgements, and then I want to go to climate change because that's something I want to really talk about. Again, huge thanks to Kirsten and John right here, and various other huge sources of phenomenal inspiration for me. I still continue to work with Shelja and Flavio. So another book is due to come out on social choice, and hopefully later this year. On governance and institutions, again, this is something we are continuing to work on. We are trying to develop this link with the Mo Ibrahim Foundation, Camila Roca, who is in charge of the research there, and also work with Michael Woolcock, Harvard Kennedy School. So Michael did come to Bradford a couple of years ago before the pandemic, gave a talk to us. Professor Haider Khan, again, Haider also came to Bradford. I think surely you have met him at one of the conferences. Professor Sudarshan and these colleagues. Eko Purnamo is our PhD, did PhD in Bradford, is already full professor in University of Muhammadiyah Yogyakarta. Some of our students are planning to go there for their Alan Turing visit. So again, very, with Eko, you have to be very careful. If you mention something to him, in a month's time, you will have a paper with your name, and he will just go away and work. So anything you mention to Eko, you need to be very clear that you want to publish on it. So that's phenomenally productive, and certain PhD students in the room. Make note. No pressure, no pressure. Right, so this is the final part. So I hope to take another 8 to 10 minutes. I won't take long. So if this is the map, what are they? Bridges. Yeah, Humber Bridge is there, and yeah, you're right. Bristol, Avon. Okay, I'll come back to you. That's right. So climate change, we all know the big numbers. So Bill Gates, I think, summarized very well, 51 billion and 0. These are two big numbers if you want to remember, he always says. So 51 billion is the total amount of CO2 equivalent of gases we are putting into the atmosphere. I calculated, this is only CO2, not CO2 equivalent, so I don't have methane, etc. included, but only CO2, I came up to about 30 something, 35, 38 billion tons of CO2 we are putting into the atmosphere. So that's a huge number, and from that, we have to come to 0. So if you had to recommend 2 policies, which 2 would you recommend? So this is our final poll. I think I may have wrongly pressed it already. Yeah. Same Slido, same number. Those on the Zoom also can vote. If you had to choose only 2 policies to address climate change, which 2 you would vote? Okay. It was interesting to see dynamic. Okay. We'll take it as done. Reduce consumption, that's a very good one. Net zero. Increase tax on fossil fuels. For carbon offset, you're not great fans of carbon offset, I can see that. And banning petrol cars and diesel cars, again, very few people for that. I think that's very good, thank you. So let me come back. Okay. So, yeah, so at the COP26, we became a member of UNFCCC as an observer member. So a small group of students, Amir and I, we went to COP26. We remember these famous words, yeah, coal, cars, cash, trees. So he's very good in summarizing. This is our Bradford in terms of 5% annual flooding. So climate change is not something happening somewhere in Bangladesh, etc. It's real even for Bradford. It's for us. It's here. Yeah. So we know Boxing Day floods, 2015, and various. So we know that this is here. So this is a very important diagram. Everybody who studies climate change knows this. So basically, what it is telling us is that if you want to address climate change, there are 3 main ways. One is produce less CO2. Number 2, remove CO2 from atmosphere. Or number 3, stop sunlight from coming to the earth and causing temperature. So these are the 3. So let me start with the third one. This is called climate engineering. It used to be called geoengineering. The idea became even more popular after this data showed that because of all the particles that were thrown out by Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines in 1991, the next couple of years, global temperatures cooled by about 0.5 degree Celsius. So from this, people thought that, okay, if you spray aerosols into the upper atmosphere, that will disperse some of the radiation, so we can cool it. So this kind of idea. This is a paper. This looks like a cartoon, but this actually appeared in an Elsevier journal paper. So that journal paper has this diagram. Yeah. So this is a very interesting summary of the various ways in which we can reduce the radiation coming into the planet, or reflect, put some mirrors in the desert, reflect sunlight back, and things like that. So there are various kinds of mechanisms that are suggested. But climate engineering is not something I think many people are comfortable with, because this is us kind of meddling with, even bigger forces. So second one, reduce CO2. Why we should do that? Why net zero? Again, the case is very clear. So that is our kind of, CO2 consumption production pattern. And what we need cumulative, if we want to flatten out, then the net has to come to 0. So the first graph in the right-hand side, IPCC, it shows that it has to come down to 0 if we want to flat out the cumulative, because the carbon dioxide stays in the atmosphere. Many people in this room already know it stays in the atmosphere for 100 or even more years. So that's why we have to achieve that. So that's why this idea of a net zero. It can't be 0 carbon, because then we all have to stop breathing. I don't know how good you are in Hatha Yoga. I'm not very good, so I'm not any moment signing up for 0 carbon yet, but net zero, yes, because I think that's something feasible. Okay, so British public are concerned about climate change, so it shows that the number of percentage of people saying that they're concerned has been going up. This is from June 2012 to March 2020. So the graph has been going up, number of people saying we are concerned. This is, I found data set which is from 1921, the number of cars registered in UK. So it's fantastic. For most of the time it was flat, and then 1995, I think something happened. I don't know what happened. It's a rail privatization, or I don't know what drove people to buy cars. I don't know what happened in 95, or I came to do PhD in 95. Maybe that's what. Anyway, so it shot up, and you can see it has never stopped, and it kept going up until 2018. And of course, after that, it has started to fall, but still, it's pretty high. So it's a kind of a paradox. If we knew about climate change, we wouldn't have bought the cars. No, we know about climate change because in the previous graph I showed you that we said that. We buy as few cars as possible. That's also not true. Nearly 35–40% of us have 2 or more cars. And the bottom one is for England, top one is for Wales. Our European neighbors, maybe they buy fewer cars than us, they're better. So we are buying around 490 cars per 1,000 population. And there, you can see some are buying 900 cars per 1,000 population, etc. Yeah. So our 490 figure would be somewhere there. So we are pretty close to Netherlands, but many other countries, have more cars per person. Luxembourg is interesting, almost 900 cars per person. But what kind of cars? Luxembourg's are, I think, a little bit cleaner, but some of the other countries, still they're buying a lot of diesel cars as well. So we can see that. So again, that's a paradox. This is a very interesting one. I think Kirsten mentioned it when she came to give a talk to our Sustainable Cities class. So that's why I dug this out. So is there a kind of a income elasticity of demand, or is it a kind of a status thing? What is going on here? So we can see very clearly that if you are a poor person, you don't own a car. If you are any other income, any other group, you have a car, right? And it's very clear. If you are high income group, 90%. Otherwise, there it's about 80%. It's only the poorest people. The lowest decile are the people who don't have a car. So this is really, something peculiar. Okay, I looked at also our kind of 5 cities in the West Yorkshire region. Just wanted to make sure in Bradford we are not buying too many cars, but that's not the case. It has been growing steadily up. But more vehicles means taking longer time. Many other cities is a commuter getting slower slower, but in case of Bradford, it's positive news. It's only data for 2 years, but at least our average speed has improved. So I think that's a positive news, I guess. And overall vehicle miles also, we are buying more cars, but total number of vehicle miles traveled is decreasing. So that means we are making fewer shorter journeys. Yeah. So I think those are all good news. But at least Bradford is not in the list of slowest cities ranked or something, which is very good. Okay, so we talked about carbon footprint, but there are also other things in terms of waste. I just brought 2 examples here. We all see this quite a lot these days. This is completely made from vegetables. It looks like plastic, yeah, made from vegetables. So this technology is available already. This is again, 100% plant-based, compostable, compost me. So these kind of things are available. So the technology is coming up. So it's how to change behaviors, I think is an important issue. We do recycle, but it's below 50%. Still, I think we are about 48%. This is national figure, not Bradford. So I think we have a way to go. So I'll skip this. I want to finally mention about removing carbon from atmosphere. So this is called the carbon capture and storage. So there are several plants all over the world. So total number, etc. we can see. So the map earlier I showed you, those dots, those are the CCS projects, which are already going ahead. So Humber Zero Humber, and Humber Net Zero. There are 2 projects there. So one is called Zero Humber. The other one is called Humber Net Zero. And that's one of the largest CCS plants in the world, 18 point so many million tons per annum. That's the carbon dioxide they're going to suck out of atmosphere and then take it in a pipe and put it in under the sea in a place. Guess what it is called? Endurance. So the place where they're going to put it, it's called Endurance. So very interesting. So that's why you see all these dots. Yeah, that's I think that's shown there. Endurance. This is the whole, and there is also Middlesbrough cluster. So this is very interesting. So UK is one of the leading figures in this technology. Okay, my final listing. So I said about justice. So I kind of gave you some glimpses or tensions or paradoxes. So when we think of sustainability as an issue of justice or fairness, I want you to remember these 6 dimensions. It's very simple. So present generation, future generation, right? So we always think of within present generation there is poverty, so we have to deal with that. Solar talks very clearly about that, and then you have present and future generation tension, and then present generation here and poverty elsewhere or impact elsewhere within the UK. So that's a national impact, and then global impact. We are consuming here, and there is impact on people in Bangladesh or people in Maldives or people in Africa, etc. So those are the kind of, so the first one, I think we have to connect present generation here with improved quality of living for people in Bradford in the future. So that's kind of very obvious WCED definition, if you like. The second one is connecting our present consumption with nationally. So this is, you can say, about national sustainable development strategy or something like that. And then the third one, of course, globally. So this is where you need, CSR, Rana Plaza incident makes us really very bad. And then we don't want to consume anymore those kind of products, and we want, any child labor free products, etc. So that's coming in terms of within present generation, how consumption here in Bradford is connected with global forces. But these yellow ones, these are interesting and more difficult. Present consumption here impacting on future person in Nepal or future person in Nigeria or future person in Sri Lanka or something like that. That's very difficult. And the other one, oh, sorry, that's a global one. The first one is impact of our actions on people living in north of Scotland or people living in Wales or something like that. So these are the kind of 6 dimensions that I want you to think of. To close, I want to show you this. So what do you see in this picture? Something, a not so interesting road with some traffic. Yeah. Yeah, so the things you see on the light poles, they are turbines. So at the moment, there is a very interesting work going on. So this person is a young entrepreneur from Pakistan who wanted to develop this. So he won a competition with Shell, and he was placed in Dundee. And so Dundee City Council helped to develop that thing. It's called capture mobility. So because every time a vehicle passes, we know there's a blast of wind. So wherever you have good traffic flow, you can put these things. So of course, we have a lot of streetlights in Bradford. Chief Executive CNDC is here, but I don't think all roads in Bradford we can put them because there needs to be some amount of speed. But maybe on Ring Road or maybe on M602 or 606, I forgot what it's 606. Maybe places like that would be ideal because where traffic is kind of going fast, where I think it could be put. So again, this is something innovation that we can think of. So our students are already helping us to push these kind of innovations. Our colleagues are working on various kinds of things. I just mentioned a few of my students, not to embarrass them, but they're pushing on these kinds of things, and hopefully we can see more of these and apply to both Bradford or nationally and globally. I think. Okay, I showed you a lot of statistics. I don't want you to think that UK is rubbish in climate and all these things. So I want to give you some positive news before I close. This is Yale University's Environmental Performance Index. It compares various countries. And guess who is #1? Yeah, so that's Denmark. There is no surprise there, but we are #4. So to be in that company is there's a lot of positive things and a lot of good news happening. And when you dig deep into that, in CO2 management, etc., we are #1. You can't see it, but in CO2 management and carbon related, I showed you CCS, etc. We are world leading. So I think that's why we get those points. Okay, so I think I kind of gave you an overview. So as this kind of urban myth or some kind of well-known saying, whichever way you want to take it, it takes a village to raise a child. I think it takes a city to raise scholarship. So on behalf of all the scholars, I am grateful to the city. Where I think we need to create and sustain an atmosphere of positivity, inclusivity, and safety. It's very easy to forget that how important it is. So I think it's that's why I put it there. It's not easy for women especially and people like me to succeed, but here I am, thanks to I think a very inclusive university and a very inclusive city. Thank you.